Happy New Year. I'm not sure what everybody did last night. I know what we did here. And one thing, yesterday we had an interesting discussion that made me think of something that I wanted to share. This is a good day for it, depending on what you did last night. I guess we were talking about precepts. And I was reminded how much I've learned from our Abbeys, actually, and from having precepts. One was about not putting myself in situations where negative karma could ripen, and how much more careful I am now. And the other had to do with just having precepts, and I don't know why it took me to have precepts to get this together in my head, but it did, which is there's a lot of situations in our life that we actually don't want to be a part of, but we go along. In my family, there were certain unwritten rules that you just don't not show up for a lot of things, whether you want to be there or not. And sometimes things were things that, like maybe you go to parties or this or that, things that you're around, things that you really don't want to be around. Like maybe at work, a lot of people want to go out and, I don't know, just get plowed or something. I don't know whatever it is. For me, it was a thing about not wanting to be around people getting drunk and stuff like that. I don't enjoy that. And so, but it wasn't until I had precepts that I would allow myself, it entered into my head that I don't really have to be a part of these things. And I just thought, isn't that strange that it took precepts to kind of get me to that place? And so, who knows what people did last night, but really thinking about allowing ourselves to make decisions in our life, whether we take precepts or not, of choosing what we want to be around and what kind of situations that we want to be in. And from the perspective of karma, this is one thing that came out this weekend. His Holiness was saying that when we do purification practice, which is the retreat that we just did, for ordinary beings, essentially the words I use, you're attenuating your karmic seeds. You have karmic seeds on your mind stream, and those, if the conditions are right, those could come to fruition. And some of those we don't really want to be around. And His Holiness was saying that for ordinary beings, you're actually stopping some of these things from happening. And the way I always think of that is that you're not really allowing the conditions. You may have these seeds on your mind stream, but they have to have certain conditions in order to ripen. And this is where a lot of our practice is, and we can make decisions around this and choose what kind of situations we're in and try to work on our state of mind so our mental states are such that they stay virtuous, so that our unwholesome, negative karmic seeds don't ripen. So just kind of taking that perspective on our lives, I think, is worthwhile. We can be proactive, and this is what a lot of our Dharma practice is to control the conditions of our mind, the conditions that we put ourselves in, which is what precepts are about in some ways. We choose to restrict certain things that the Buddha thought would lead us into problems. Yeah, I can give some examples. The one where I really learned this was when I was newly ordained and I was going to a funeral. And it was going to be a rather potentially chaotic experience during parts of the day with the people that I was going to be around. And it was a very loaded situation in the sense of, well, you can imagine, the funeral was for someone who had committed suicide. And the emotions around that time with the people I was going to be with were going to be, who knows? I didn't really know what I was walking into, or even if I would be safe, because this person shot themselves. And I realized, these are young kids who have guns. And I'm going to this funeral, And these are people who like to drink and take drugs, because this is kind of how this happened, right? The person actually probably killed himself partly because he was taking some kind of drugs that were out there at that time that make you not be able to think well at all, really screw up your thinking. Known among people who take a lot of different kinds of drugs is these you can't think straight on. You know, a lot of people who take drugs often, they educate themselves some about what they're doing. And this is the kind of drug this person took. So I'm walking into a situation where, well, I don't really know what it's going to be like here. And our Venerable Abbess said, well, you know, you need to be back at your hotel at dinner time every night by 6. Because we don't drive at night alone. And that was like the first time in my life, I wouldn't have done that actually. I would have been around, because that's what you do in my family. You are around. You're there with everybody. You know, me, I might crash early because I like to sleep more than others, and I don't. But I don't actually like to be around people who are drinking and this and that. And so for me, it was great because some of the people I was around then were drinking starting in the morning. This was like one of the friends of my nephew. I remember we went out to the bridge where he shot himself. It was an overpass over a highway. And I went there with my sister and friends of my nephew. And we went to right near that overpass because they had it blocked off. And we just kind of tried to heal a little bit. But some of these kids were not so together. And one of them had already started drinking. It was like, I don't know if it was even afternoon yet. And because we're sitting out there, the police came. And so, because we were near this area, you know, and they just decided you shouldn't be there. And so we just left, you know. But this kid was drunk. And so he didn't just leave. He got himself arrested, you know. And so this is, you know, this is what happens in life, you know, these are things that happen. And so we can choose, you know, what kind of situations we want to be in. I didn't feel unsafe then. I don't like to break the law. So when that policeman came and said, you can't be in this area, we just all got up and left. We weren't in an area that I knew to be off limits. But this one kid had gone onto the overpass, which has a fence. You're not supposed to be there, you know. And probably it's a freeway. So probably he was seen. You know, this is things people do. So, you know, this is just one instance and it was the first time I had done that because of Precepts. And I was like, I just remember thinking, why haven't I ever done this before? Why haven't I just chosen to not be a part of things that I didn't really want to be around? You know, it was that simple of a thought. But it was very empowering for me. Happy New Year. Better not to drink. Why is it better not to drink? Many people can handle their liquor, as they say. Many people can. But you know what? There's a whole lot of people you're around who can't. And they need support. And it doesn't support them when you're drinking. So for you, those of you who have this as your customs and your whatever, there's a lot of reasons I hear people say. I have to tell you, from my experience in my life, I would say you would really be kinder to people if you wouldn't drink. Because there's a lot of people who can't control themselves, and they need to be around people who aren't drinking. Recently, I was at a situation where one person is trying to refrain from alcohol who has a serious problem with it. And so for the little gathering, oh, of course, we have to have wine. It's a meal. We're celebrating. So they brought some wine, and that person didn't drink. But do you know when they left, the person who made this dinner who has a drinking problem, they left the wine there with it not fully empty. You know, this is the kind of mindless things that people do who don't really understand what people are dealing with who have drinking problems or any kind of addiction problems, any kind of addiction. We all, you know, have our own type. But, you know, some of these things, you know, this doesn't help people. So that's my bandstand.